The moment I knew something had broken beyond repair didn't come with shouting or slamming doors. It came with silence. A silence so absolute, it felt like someone had wrapped the world in cotton and left me alone inside it. The lobby was packed. Laughter echoed from the far end of the hall. Glasses clinked, music hummed low in the background, and every detail, from the crystal-cut nameplates to the gold-trimmed brochures, screamed celebration. My celebration. My business launch. But as I stood at the edge of it all, heart pounding, scanning the crowd for the faces that were supposed to mean everything to me, they weren't there. Not one. Not my mother. Not my sister. Not my cousin who still owed me for that loan I gave her during her divorce. They didn't even send a message. No flowers. No repost of the launch announcement I had printed and hand-delivered with trembling fingers a week prior. Nothing. I remember gripping the sides of the podium that night, knuckles white, forcing a smile as I thanked investors and strangers for believing in me, while the people who were supposed to know me best chose a rooftop bar and mojitos over a once-in-a-lifetime moment. I stood under the spotlight, all sequins and steel nerves, pretending I couldn't hear the absence. 3 days later, my phone rang. It was my mother. Not with an apology, but a request. $20,000. Apparently, cheering me on was too extravagant. But draining me? Oh, that was tradition. The morning of the launch, I had woken long before the sun. The air in my studio apartment was cold, thick with the kind of quiet that came before change. I held a chipped mug of chamomile tea, hands wrapped tight around it even though I never drank it, and stared out the window at a city just starting to stretch awake. Fog curled low between buildings like the breath of something ancient. I hadn't slept. Not really. My body had buzzed all night with a strange mix of excitement and dread. For 2 years, I had buried myself in this dream, freelance contracts that bled into dawn, canceled dinners, cheap takeout in front of spreadsheets, every cent hoarded like treasure. There were no vacations, no shopping sprees. I'd worn holes into my sneakers and called it minimalism. It was never just a business. It was a rebellion. A quiet revolution made from late-night ideas and coffee-ring notebooks. An idea no one believed in, certainly not my family. They had called it quaint, a phase. A boutique consultancy for independent creators, a space where art and entrepreneurship could coexist. Coaching, branding, digital presence, real impact. Everything I never had when I started out. My answer to a world that kept too much and supported too little. The office wasn't in a high-rise. It was a cozy corner suite on a half-renovated block, all exposed brick and refurbished windows. I'd installed reclaimed wood shelves, hand-lettered signs, and framed sketches from local artists. It felt like standing inside a dream that had finally said yes. But the silence from my family screamed louder than any grand opening speech. The excuses trickled in over the next few days like they always had. My mother had a migraine translation, didn't want to deal with the train ride. My sister had a brunch. A brunch. With friends she'd met 2 months ago. My cousin forgot. Rain check, babe. I saw the photos. All of them. Together. On some sun-drenched rooftop, sunglasses and filters, tagged and smiling, their drinks glowing in the late autumn light. The city that had birthed my dream was the same city they were in that day, just 1 subway ride away. And they never came. I didn't cry. I stood behind the reception desk that night, alone, after the last guest had gone, after the speeches, the champagne, the applause. I wiped down the counter like it mattered, folded napkins into perfect squares, and watched the lights dim one by one until the office felt less like a triumph and more like a museum of what could have been. I wasn't surprised. Not really. My family has always had a way of erasing me gently. I was the applause at their events, the babysitter during their breakdowns, the dependable one with no boundaries and bottomless generosity. I was the side character in their dramas, the punchline in their anecdotes. Never the protagonist. Never the headline. So when my mother called 3 days later, not to ask how it went, but to ask for $20,000, I felt something inside me shift. Not snap. Just slide. Like a door closing. I wouldn't ask if it weren't important, she said. She said Uncle Jerome had lost his job. That my sister had been helping but was stretched thin. That it was just a tough time. That I was finally doing well and surely had something to spare. A small loan. Just 20,000. I didn't yell. I didn't even speak. I just stared out my apartment window, watching headlights slice through fog, and let her voice become a drone. People will tell you who they are if you let them talk long enough. Tasha? Are you still there? She finally asked. Still here. Always here. The ATM. The fallback. The one who couldn't say no until now. I didn't answer her. I just hung up. And then I sat down, opened the notebook I kept hidden beneath my accounting ledgers, and wrote one sentence at the top of a fresh page. They only show up when they're hungry. Below it, I started a list, not of debts, but of leverage. Because if they were going to treat me like a resource, it was time I started charging interest. The first message came from my sister 2 days after that call. Vague. Breezy. The kind of casual optimism that made my stomach twist. Hey babe, sorry we missed the launch. Heard it was amazing. Wanna grab brunch this weekend? Just us girls, 2 hearts. She had never used that phrase in her life. I didn't reply. I let the silence between us stretch, pulled tight like fishing wire. I waited to see what she'd do next. 2 days later, a follow-up. A photo of the 2 of us from 4 years ago, arms draped around each other in bridesmaid dresses, her glowing, me straining to keep my smile straight. God, I miss you. Let's reconnect. Still no mention of the launch. No apology. No explanation. Just curated nostalgia weaponized as guilt. I let that one sit too. That night, I closed the office early, 7:15 instead of 7:30, and settled in the window nook with my pen and the same notebook. Outside, the city hummed in low gear. Streetlights blinked to life. A woman across the street argued into a phone while her cab idled. I looked down at the page titled, They Only Show Up When They're Hungry. Under it, a list of names now stretched across 2 columns. My sister. My mother. My cousin. And others, the aunt who always said I was too sensitive, the uncle who used to ask when I'd get a real job. Next to each name, I wrote the last time they'd shown up without an agenda. Some entries were blank. And then, the phone rang again. Danny. Not a text. A call. She was either serious or desperate. I let it ring. Once. Twice. Voicemail. She tried again 2 hours later. 3rd time, I picked up. But I didn't say a word. Wow, she breathed. You're alive. Thought maybe your books kidnapped you. I waited. You're mad. I get it. We wanted to come, but things came up. Mom, you know how she is. And I didn't want to make things worse by showing up late. So you made the choice to not come at all, I said. Pause. We wanted to be there. I'm proud of you. Seriously. I've told everyone at work about your new place. But she hesitated. Things are tight. Like, really tight. And that's kind of why I'm calling. Of course. I hate asking, she went on, but Mom said she mentioned it already. It's just, you're finally doing well. Maybe you could help? Just float us until. I'll lend you the money, I said. Silence. You will. But there are terms. She laughed, uncertain. What does that even mean? Interest. Emotional interest, I said. You show up, you get support. You disappear, you get silence. You ask, you give something first. You want something, you earn it. There was a beat. Then 2. She wasn't used to this version of me. You're serious? I am. Click. She hung up. No goodbye. No thank you. That night, I added a second line beneath the first one in my notebook. No one rides for free. The contract I sent my sister wasn't legally binding, not in the traditional sense. No notarized seal. No fine print. No lawyer's signature. Just my handwriting on thick ivory paper, folded into the silence I had been force-fed all my life. It wasn't about the money. It was about accountability. The terms were simple. Show up. Ask, don't expect. Give as much as you take. Don't mistake my kindness for obligation. She didn't reply. She didn't sign. She didn't call back. And that finally was enough. I didn't write the contract for her. I wrote it for me. A declaration. A spell. Something sacred and unspoken, finally made solid. For days after that, I felt the quiet settle differently. Not heavy anymore. Not suffocating. But light. Freeing. I got more done. Reorganized the resource library, hosted a guest mentor session for local youth, posted new photos on our social feed. Clients trickled in, and one stayed late just to tell me that my place felt like it was built with a spine. But peace, it turns out, doesn't stay uninterrupted for long. The bell above the front door jingled on a Thursday afternoon. I looked up from my laptop to see a shadow spill across the floor. Tall. Slouched. Familiar in that way that made my stomach tighten before my brain even caught up. Ray. My cousin. The golden boy. Hoodie, backwards cap, and that performative humility he wore like a hoodie 2 sizes too small. Yo, he said, hands in pockets, grin lopsided. This place is real, huh? I didn't move from behind the counter. He walked in like he belonged, like nothing had fractured. I was gonna come to the launch, I swear. But, don't finish that sentence, I said, evenly. He paused, blinked, and then chuckled like I was joking. Damn, okay? You're a little cold today. What do you want, Ray? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he paced. Stopped near the window where the community event board hung, scanned the flyers like they were going to rescue him. Then he turned. It's the studio, he said. Deal fell through. Investor bailed. I've got gear in storage I'm gonna lose if I can't pay the unit. How much? $5,000. Just to float me. Just till I get this next pitch in place. I walked around the counter, arms crossed. You make beats, right? His face lit up. Yeah. You've heard my stuff. I'm hosting a creative showcase next month. Poetry, spoken word, acoustic sets. You headline the first night. Bring your gear. Perform. No pay. But you'll be in front of the exact people who commission freelance and fund art. You show up for me, I'll show up for you. He stared. You're bartering, he asked, tone halfway between confusion and offense. I'm offering mutual benefit. We're family. Exactly. He shifted on his feet. Ran a hand down his face like I had offered him a broken umbrella in a thunderstorm. Man, he muttered, heading for the door. You've changed. No, I said softly. I just stopped making myself small so you could stay comfortable. He didn't look back. The bell jingled. The silence returned. But it didn't sting this time. It resonated. That evening, one of my regulars, a quiet woman named May who always wore headphones and carried a thermos of lemon tea, approached the counter before closing. This place, she said, pausing. It feels like it's held together by boundaries, not walls. It's strong without needing to be loud. I smiled. That's the goal. She left. I watched her go, and the words stayed with me long after the lights went off. I wasn't loud. But I was done being unheard. The next test came in the form of rain. A gray Wednesday afternoon, heavy clouds pressing down on the skyline, puddles forming in the uneven cracks of the sidewalk. The door opened just before 5. My mother. She didn't knock. She never did. She stepped in like she had built this place herself, shaking out her umbrella, her coat pristine, her lipstick fresh. I stood still. She scanned the room. You rearranged, she said. I said nothing. She walked closer, eyes on the shelves like they could distract her from the reason she was here. You didn't respond to my messages. I know. I called. I texted. I saw. She looked at me fully now. Not like a daughter, but like a stranger she had to negotiate with. I should have been there, she said at last. But your sister. You weren't there, I said. Calm. Clear. That's the truth. Let's not blur it with excuses. Her expression twisted, the mask faltering. We've been stretched thin. Your uncle's job. Your sister's. And now you're here. She hesitated. Then soft. Do you have it? There it was. Not even cloaked in maternal softness. Just a transaction waiting to be approved. I do, I said. But you won't be getting it. She blinked, like I'd spoken a language she didn't recognize. I'm not asking for me. I know. But it always comes through you. Her lips parted, closed. You've always been difficult, she said eventually. Even as a child. So intense. And you've always been conditional, I replied. You love best when you're owed. She looked around the office again, but this time, her eyes were tired. Tired in a way even luxury couldn't fix. "You know I love you," she said. "No," I said. "I know you benefit from me. And I'm done pretending that's the same thing." The light outside had faded to blue. A storm was coming. The windows rattled softly. She whispered, "Don't cut me off." "I'm not. I'm just closing the tab you keep open in my life without paying the subscription." Silence. Real silence. Then she turned. And for the first time, she left without slamming the door. They didn't come back. Not Danny. Not Ray. Not my mother. No apologetic texts typed in midnight regret. No calls with shaky voices. No, just checking in, messages pretending that time had smoothed over absence. Nothing. Just quiet. The kind most people mistake for loneliness. But not me. Not anymore. Because silence isn't always absence. Sometimes it's peace. Sometimes it's a boundary finally respected, not because it's understood, but because it's impenetrable. A week after my mother's rainy exit, I hosted the consultancy's second event. Not just a networking mixer. This time it was artful, curated, intimate. Local poetry readings, 2 acoustic musicians, 1 emerging author. We transformed the space. String lights, folding chairs, wine someone donated last minute. A friend of a client brought homemade lemon ginger cookies that disappeared in under an hour. 15 people showed up. Then 20. Then 36. We ran out of chairs. The girl who read first was barely 17. Her hands shook so badly she dropped the paper twice. But she read anyway. Her voice cracked halfway through the last stanza, and when she finished, the applause rose so loud and immediate that her face crumpled into tears. Not from pain. From being seen. I stood behind the counter, watching with a mug I never drank from. And something clicked inside me. I had done it. I had created something real. Not in defiance of the family who didn't show, but in celebration of the ones who did. The ones who chose to. The ones who saw me not as a resource, but as a person. As a builder. A leader. Someone who had turned absence into architecture and disappointment into design. After the lights dimmed and the last of the cookie crumbs had been swept, I sat in the old armchair by the window. The one I reupholstered myself. I opened the same notebook that had held my hurt and flipped to a fresh page. And I wrote, "They may never come back and I may never be who they wanted, but I am mine. Fully. Finally. Forever." I underlined it. Twice. Then, without thinking too much, I moved to the back of the office where the afternoon light came in like honey. There was a narrow window there, framed by bookshelves and the smell of dust and paper. I cleared out a small corner. Not for merchandise. Not for marketing. For me. A personal shelf. I hand-lettered a sign that read, "Books that saved me." Just 6 to start. All dog-eared. Not bestsellers. Not curated. Just the ones that held me in the quiet hours when I wasn't sure I'd make it through. Beneath that shelf, I placed a wooden box. Blank index cards. A pen. A small sign. Write down a book that saved you. Or a sentence that stayed. Or the day you found your way back to yourself. Within days, the box was full. People came and stayed longer. They wandered the space with a kind of reverence I didn't expect. They wrote stories. Confessions. Names of novels and the dates they stopped feeling alone. A man wrote down a fantasy novel his sister used to read to him before she died. A woman scribbled the first line of her divorce paperwork and thanked the poetry section for giving her courage. A teenager wrote the name of a book they hadn't finished yet, but hoped would save them someday. I read every single one. Late at night. Alone. And I didn't feel alone once. Because the people who showed up now weren't trying to collect from me. They were adding something. Sharing something. Choosing to belong, not to take. That's the thing they don't tell you about walking away from people who taught you how to disappear. You don't just lose noise. You gain clarity. Volume. Voice. You gain yourself. And the people who find you after that aren't accidents. They're aligned. They're earned. They're yours. I stopped waiting for my family to notice what I built. To call. To apologize. To beg for entry into a version of belonging I used to pray for. because I no longer needed them to. They made their choice. And now I was making mine. It's funny how quickly peace can become a routine. Not loud, not even noticeable, just present. Like background music you didn't realize was playing until it stops and you miss the rhythm. The consultancy began to hum with that rhythm. Clients returned. Referrals came in. Artists left thank you notes on sticky pads. My inbox became less about requests for money and more about partnerships, ideas, plans that felt built with care. I never got the call. No apology. No tearful message from my sister. No sudden realization from my mother. No cousin at the door with regret in his voice. But I did get something else. A letter. Slipped beneath the office door one morning, folded neatly, no return address. Just my name in familiar handwriting I hadn't seen in years. My Aunt Mary. The one who used to say, "Bookstores are dying, sweetie. Get into digital marketing." The letter wasn't long, but it was honest. She said she'd been wrong. That she didn't know how to support someone she couldn't understand. That it was easier to dismiss than to learn. She wrote that her daughter, my cousin, had told her about the event. That she had seen a photo online. And that something in it struck her. Something she couldn't explain. "You looked free," she wrote. And I realized I've never known what that looked like on someone in our family. She signed it with a shaky flourish. "I'm proud of you." Even if I didn't say it when it counted. I didn't cry. I just folded it slowly and tucked it behind the front desk ledger. Not to forget it, but not to display it either. Just to keep it. Like a fossil. Evidence of a shift. Weeks passed. The shop continued to grow. Slowly. Steadily. Some months were leaner than others. But I made it work. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. One Friday afternoon, as the last golden light filtered through the front windows, a young girl came in, maybe 12, maybe 13. Quiet. Watchful. She drifted toward the books that saved me shelf and stayed there, fingers skimming covers like they were braille for the soul. I watched her. Eventually, she took a card. Wrote something. Slipped it into the box. Then she looked up and said, "I want to open a place like this one day. Not big. Just safe." "You can," I said. "You absolutely can." She nodded like she believed me. Then left. After she was gone, I pulled her card from the box. There was only one sentence written in a looping, hopeful scroll. "I haven't found the book that saved me yet, but I'm looking." I stared at it a long time. Then tucked it into the notebook I'd carried since day one. The one that once held lists of leverage, names of debts, and all the rules I'd written in self-defense. Now it held something else. Softness. Stillness. Stories that mattered. I had spent so long mourning the absence of my family support that I almost missed the miracle of my own presence. My own resilience. My own becoming. And so, if you're reading this, if you're still waiting for someone to clap for you, to say they see you, to finally call and mean it, let me tell you what I know now. Sometimes they never come. And sometimes, that's the best thing that could ever happen. Because when you stop waiting at the door they never walk through, you start noticing the windows. And if you're lucky, you'll find that one corner where the light comes in slow, but full. Gentle, but steady. The place where your name is written on the walls not because someone gave it to you, but because you carved it there yourself. That's where I live now. Where the light comes in. Where what I built finally feels like mine. Fully. Finally. Forever.